Hey Mohan, thanks for joining us on the Engineering Manifestos podcast and sharing your journey and experience building with AI. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Raj. I really appreciate you having me on this podcast to really talk about like our journey so far and also really how we are really applying AI for our day-to-day development for the software development lifecycle. So I'm really happy to have that discussion
Sure,
today.
sure. So we usually start off with a brief introduction about yourself and your company and product. So yeah, if you can give us the listeners a
Yeah.
quick overview about yourself and the company and product.
Thanks. Again, my name is Mohan Umapathy. I co-founded Qikr AI about 16 months ago. Prior to Qikr, I was leading the IoT platform development at Verizon. And prior to that, I was a director at Qualcomm. When we were at Verizon, we kind of saw the potential for AI really changing the software development. And I really noticed that at very early in 2023 and we kickstarted the hackathons of applying AI to the software development lifecycle in the first quarter of 2023, way before people really started adopting AI into their software. Um, I mean, the funny story is like it started with my wife asking me like, hey, she's looking for an automation to create Jira tickets, or sorry, not Jira, tickets for her process. And the software that she was trying to automate was something called Redmine. I have never heard about it. I mean, it's some unique, some proprietary, some software that's similar to Jira. And she was tired of entering it manually and she wanted to say, hey, how can I do it? I told her, like, I was just learning about ChatGPT. This was back in like December of 2022. I just told her, hey, why don't you try ChatGPT? It's something new. And funny enough, she was able to automate that integration and everything in about a couple of days. That's when I realized that, like, okay, this technology has a potential to really impact pretty much everything that we do. And also, we kind of started testing with like we had an incident like of like somebody updating a database incorrectly in our software, and it was going through the normal development lifecycle process, and we realized somebody did not catch a specific scenario. And we said, okay, let's see if we take a generalized version of that problem and give it to ChatGPT and see if it can detect it. Funny enough, it was actually not detecting it the first time. So it was actually pointing out to a different mistake. And I was thinking, okay, it is not quite ready. It turns out that actually I made a mistake while generalizing the problem and giving it to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT was actually identifying the problem that I made while generalizing that problem and giving it to ChatGPT. Once I fixed the generalized problem, it actually kind of identified the other secondary, the real problem that we had. And it was able to identify both. And that's when I realized this technology has roots. It has fundamentally something that is going to impact everyone's life because it is able to reason, it is able to identify things that would have really taken humans quite a bit of time. So by
Mm.
having this automation and have this reasoning process coming in, it really is fundamentally different than what we had. And that's when I kind of decided that I want to be with this technology, and that's why we started Quicker. And we started with Quicker with a couple of my friends who have been known to me for quite some time, and part of colleagues that we worked with me. The goal of Quicker is really to figure out how to define the future of education with AI together. So with AI, we believe that we can really transform and really help the teachers, the students, and the admins so that like the future of education is going to be more integrated with AI and humans rather than just being humans. So that's really where we are today. And I'm really happy to share more information about like how we are
Sure.
using AI in our product as well as how we are applying AI in terms of developing the products that we
Sure.
have.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the the history and the context in terms of how you've ended up building Qikr. So I think that's helpful. So in terms of the product itself, uh, it's sort of based on my understanding, it's like an AI-powered assistant for educators to use AI in the process of building lesson plans and the curriculum for the students and basically yeah an ed
Yeah.
tech platform is sort of how I understand maybe a little bit in terms of the capabilities and sort of how you are leveraging AI in the product slash solution. Yeah, would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way to think about Quicker AI is like I would say Quicker AI is trying to bring AI into the schools and classrooms. And we have essentially three components that are targeted towards the three different stakeholders in the learning process. So the main goal is like we are trying to make the job of the teachers easier and really quicker and faster so that like rather than spending a lot of time to create lesson plans or creating quizzes or getting generating feedback based on certain rubrics, we are able to automate those steps with now AI in the picture so that like the teachers can essentially have more time to focus on the human relationship, human connection, and being able to focus on helping the students to grow rather than trying to perform reporting and automation, right? Like that could be automated by AI. So that's the focus for the teachers. This teacher productivity tools are really focus on one area. The second stakeholder that we are focused on is the student themselves, where we feel like generic AI is really giving them answers rather than teaching. So by having providing answers to the students right away, they are really getting a immediate help, but it doesn't help them with the learning. So the students essentially are what they are doing is they are just copying and pasting that solution into their homework and not really understanding how to think about it, how to reason about it, and how to really derive that answer themselves. And that's what is different with Quicker is that we actually use the curriculum that the teachers are creating and providing to the students in the classroom. And we are really using the same methodology, the same lesson plan, and the same process that the teacher is teaching, but make it available 24/7. So that when the student goes home and they're working on a homework and they don't understand a concept, they are able to really use AI to help them explain the concept, just like the way the teacher, they would have gotten the feedback from their teacher in the classroom. So that's really the goal for the students. But the third stakeholder primarily is the admins and everybody, where they want to ensure that the AI deployments in their classrooms or schools have proper guardrails and they have proper reporting and insights that particularly tells them that how well the students are really learning using the AI technology, as well as having a mechanism by which like we can also notify the teachers when the student is falling and they're not really learning or something so that like the teachers can go back and intervene and really create a support system that helps the students to really to learn and get further with it like either it can be like okay referring the student to a tutoring service or it could be some type of additional help, so really helping the student to catch up. And for students who are already advanced, so they don't get bored and become disruptive in the class. So really they what they can do is like really challenge them with additional things that so that they are engaged as well. So it really kind of helps students on the both spectrums as well as the students who are really just going through normally. So that's really the real goal for Quicker is being to able to have an end-to-end platform that really supports all the stakeholders in the educational ecosystem.
Sure.
Oh,
Thank you.
and where we are applying AI to answer your question, it's really that the productivity is really being driven primarily by the AI for the teachers. And for the students, it's really like now you are rather than giving a generic answer from the internet, you are using AI to use the curriculum and provide apply the same technology using RAG. So essentially the course knowledge for the RAG is really coming from the teachers. And then essentially then we are using LLMs to essentially combine that with the course curriculum and provide a reasonable answer that the students can understand. And we are also using AI to analyze the interactions the students are having and really understand how well they're learning the material. What are the
Mhm.
mastery pathways? what concepts have they really mastered, what concept are they really struggling with. So AI is really help analyze the interactions and provide recommendations on what are the next steps for that particular student. So it's more personalized and targeted for their learning journey rather than having a generic recommendation for all the students.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Mohan. Yeah, that was super helpful in terms of yeah, how you're leveraging AI in your product and solution. The bulk of the discussion that we focus on in this podcast is in terms of how you're using AI for making and operating things, right? Obviously, building, making and operating things, building your team, and how you make and operate things as well. So maybe we can switch in terms of how you are using AI in the process of, making and operating things, basically the SDLC flow, and then a little bit on the end to end from a solution standpoint, how you are leveraging from a operation standpoint.
Yeah, I would say we are a AI native company
Mhm.
to start with. Like we started at the with the goal of promoting and adopting AI. So we really started adopting AI ourselves from the very beginning. So that's really that's the only way we felt like we'll be able to keep up and pace with some of the larger companies and everybody. What I would say is before I say like exactly what we do, one thing I would say is the journey of applying AI into the software development lifecycle as well as for our company, it is actually a continuous process and it is not something that is fixed. And I would say the tools, the methods, the mechanisms that I am using now is completely different from what I had a year ago. And our journey has been that like we are changing that process and tools and mechanisms pretty much every 2 months.
Mhm.
So whatever I'm telling you
Yeah,
now
sure,
probably will be outdated in a couple of months or 3 months. So that's
sure.
what I would recommend. Like anybody who's like who are listening and who are thinking about this is it is not about what is it there today. It is about really a mindset of being able to apply and learn and continuously improve and change. And that's the mindset that is really needed from in the current tech world because the technology is evolving, the capabilities are evolving so fast
Mhm.
that if you have a fixed mindset of, okay, this is what AI can do today, you'll be completely kind of be have a different view 3 months from now.
Sure. No,
Um,
absolutely. Great. Yeah, great point. Go ahead.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like I mean, just if I want to like sequence it, like how I would think about it is like probably I would say like I said, probably 2 years ago, it would be mostly like you're using like maybe AI, like you're probably having one or two chats, trying to figure out what it can give, and maybe you're doing some planning with it. I would say at the beginning of last year, what we really were starting to see is like, okay, we can ask some reasonable questions, like you can give like you went from like being able to give like snippets, like you can give like maybe a method and ask for questions to like, okay, now you can actually give a complete file or maybe two or three files to the software, to the LLM and ask it a much broader question. And then I think after like probably I would say 3 months down the line, so that we are able to get like a more like multiple modules, like you can give like a somewhat reasonably sized project of existing code and have it help understand it and start giving you more details and of like, okay, help me with this particular subset of modules. And now it evolved into a phase where um, like where you are able to apply it for much larger, broader ecosystem, right? And then it evolved into a point where we are actually able to build applications. I would say like almost, I would say like beginning of fourth quarter of last year is when you can completely build brand new applications very quickly using AI. So you can just give set of instructions. You can ask it to build a plan for you, and it actually would create a complete end-to-end solution, including the DevOps piece. So essentially, what we have done is like the way we have integrated AI is like it is applied from your product requirements, then you get into the system design, then you get into the development, into your QA, into your DevOps, and into your support. So essentially, AI is really able to help into all the pieces of that journey in a much more integrated and quick way
Mm.
that otherwise would have been done by a specific SME who had specific expertise in that particular area. The example I want to give you is like I had a situation where we went to a conference, we met a particular like a CTO of a school district, and they had a specific problem that they wanted to see if we can solve for it. And we were able to come back from the conference. And by the time we came back over that week, like maybe a 3, 4 day weekend period, we actually had a working prototype that we deployed into the cloud
Mhm.
and provide the solution to the customer and have them try it out and see if that's what they wanted. So something like that, even in the best case scenario where you had all the people, like your entire team of 6 people working together, it would not have been possible for a 3 month period before you really give it to a customer to experience it and give you feedback. Now we were able to turn it around and change it into where one person working for 5 days or 4 days was able to create the complete application, including all the pieces, including deploying it and having it customer experience it. And that gave the customer the confidence. And then obviously they are going to feel like, okay, hey, you are getting something that they can test and then give you feedback and move forward with it. And that's the speed that is the gain. I mean, you should expect in the world today is really being able to quickly develop and deliver something so fast. And you can see the speed up, like the gains, right? I mean, think about
Sure.
like 6 people, 3 months versus one person, maybe 6 days.
Sure. Yeah. No,
That's
absolutely. Yeah. Makes sense. Just in terms of following up on your comment about sort of the tooling stuff keeps evolving, right? So certainly it's not about a specific tool that you're using at a given point of time. What I'd like to dig a little bit more in terms of the mechanism that you have set up within your team to be able to continue to adapt to these tooling changes and so forth, because obviously one of the key things is having your system of knowledge uh, codified so that you can use these tools to leverage in terms of your practices and procedures, right? So maybe if you can talk a little bit about how you've set up your internal systems to be able to leverage and adapt to yeah, these tools.
yeah, yeah. The thing is obviously just like everybody else, we have our kind of the code repository in like GitHub and everything. So we have our cloud environments in AWS. We have a good, solid, well architected principles that we already adopted from the very beginning. What I would say is like the reason the process is actually continuously evolving as well. To give you an example, uh, if you ask me like end of last year, how we were doing the development and what I was doing, the way we were doing it is we actually went through and created a bunch of markdown files that actually codified the different layers of the different functionalities of the SDLC. So I actually had a markdown file that would say how to do the product requirements, how to do the system design, how to do the development, how to do the code reviews, how to do the QA. So
Mm.
essentially, then when you're using a coding environment like a cursor with the particular agent, you would essentially help it create, walk through, and utilize that particular markdown file. Like they call it skills, but I we call it like a functional behavior. This is what I tend to behave. And you say, hey, use this functional behavior and create an artifact that we can utilize for the development cycle. So it was working well. So we took some of the open source ones, we expanded it, and we kind of had the good knowledge of how it should be working in enterprise settings. So we utilized that model and we were applying it very well. Now, what happened is it's a heavy process. So each step of that would take probably like in order for you to go through and create a set of product requirements, it would take probably about 30 minutes. And then in order for you to create something like, because you are going to back and forth, you're doing it, and you would go through, finish it, your product requirements, and then you take it and do a task breakdown. You do the system design, knowledge analysis, and everything, you will do it. So it was taking probably about roughly about 2 hours for you to really to become productive and create something out that you can test. Now, in the current DNA and world, that is automatically part of the LLMs nowadays. So I really don't have to go through that laborious process anymore. I am actually, we are modifying it to a more lightweight process where you essentially are going to give 5 or 6 high-level commands that describe what that process should be,
Mhm.
rather than giving the task breakdown and everything that you wanted it to do. Now the LLM is planning mechanism, the agent planning mechanisms in the software development process is automatically taking care of that for you. So the process, I would say, more than like how it is happening, what I would say is that revisit it. Like
Mhm.
whatever process you have today, 3 months from now, you might have to revisit it and see if the new technologies, the new tools, the new capabilities that you're having is going to change that completely. So that's really where we are, is that like now we have come and we are at a point where we have like a very small set of commands. Like, okay, we have a specific command that we use for like a prompt that we use for code reviews. We have a specific prompt that we use for like UI UX design, where we
Mhm.
actually say that, okay, hey, create me a world-class UI UX. We say, hey, do a bar riser code review so that like you are essentially ensuring that the code quality is of very good quality before you can push it. So that way we have certain, like I would say, high level prompts that help with certain functions rather than giving a much more detailed and broad set of guidelines that we used to have before. That speeds up the process, the development process, and you can actually build things more quickly because you're not spending that extra 2 hours creating all the artifacts that you really want to create.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the that piece. I guess for in terms of one of the other challenges that comes up is the aspect of maintenance and supportability, right? So certainly, I'm sure in your the way you're sort of describing and building your product and solution, you're factoring those requirements for supportability, reliability, and all of those aspects from a solutioning standpoint. But have you seen any challenges in terms of one is obviously the mindset of being able to keep up with these rapid changes in terms of the tooling and so forth. But besides that, from an operational standpoint, how do you make sure or yeah, continue to make sure that what you're building is something that you can support and yeah, continue to support for
Yeah.
your customers, right?
So what I would say is like you really cannot 100% trust everything that AI is giving you. Our experience has been that like I used to throw away more than 80, 90% of the code that AI used to generate a year back. So we used to only utilize 10% of the code that it actually generated, right? So that used to be the key skill that you need to know. Which code do you accept and which code do you actually reject
Mhm.
from the AI? Uh, what I would say is now it has probably improved to the point where I'm probably accepting more than 80% of the code that it is generating. But where I still feel like you still need to be grounded and you need to provide input into the AI to be successful is really understanding the broader picture and making sure you have a good, valid system design that you are able to tell the LLM that, okay, hey, here are the guiding principles for you to build this solution. And AI, for whatever reason, is still not deterministic. At sometimes it will pick a solution that is not correct. So you really need to be able to quickly identify when AI is going off the rails, bring it back into the specific train you wanted you to catch, and like keep
Mhm.
going, right? Like essentially knowing that how to quickly reflect it back into the correct state is a key skill that you need to have, and that comes with experience. Actually, like you really need to like play with it and understand what are the prompts that will allow you to bring it back. And also, what are the things that make you feel like, okay, hey, something is not correct. So you really need to ask it to further investigate and understand a little bit more on how exactly, because a lot of times what we see is that AI silently will do things that you were not expecting it to do. So being knowing that it will do those silent things and looking out for those silent things that is going to cause you problems in production, and validating those things are not there as you start owning the code that AI is
Mhm.
producing and pushing it into the production system is the key for you to being successful.
Sure. Yeah, I think great point about the ownership aspect of it because at the end of it, it is a tool that you are leveraging and you want to make sure that you use the tool the right way. Um, one other area I would like to touch upon a little bit is, uh, obviously there's things that you are also in the process of discovering and learning. There's some unknowns and things. So if you want to share a little bit about sort of some of the areas uh, that you are, still in the exploratory phase in terms of, learning and adapting. Obviously, things are going to change in the next few months, but at this point, based on what you've seen, if there are areas that you can touch upon that'll be helpful for the listeners, I think that'll be good.
Yeah, so what we are seeing is like the area that we are starting to look around is we are using like agentic software, but more around like we treat that more as a workflow. Like we kind of look at it and say, hey, we kind of have a rough idea of how this bigger task needs to be broken down and how AI can build those tasks and like sequence them together and essentially create an artifact that is useful and productive. So we have done that for a lot of the learning experiences and like software education artifacts. We have done that. But where we are trying to figure out is how can we really expand that and make it more generic and something that can really uh, be a generic mechanism that can create what the users are looking for within a specific domain. Essentially, what I want to, how can we build a domain expert on a specific area where you really tell the domain expert, I want this. And within that domain, it has some knowledge based on the RAG curriculum and everything, and certain scope that it has been given because you really don't want it to be kind of going off the rails for education. When a student is asking about something in the fourth grade, you don't want to teach them how a 12th grade mechanics class or like Newton's law of motion works and explain it based on 12th grade knowledge when the student is in a fourth grade looking to see how does the Newton's law work. So
Mhm.
really being able to have that scope and like an understanding of that and being able to narrow it down and in a domain specific way is something that we are thinking. Like we have not really solved for it completely, but that's really where we are thinking AI can really come in and really help. But what the challenge that we are seeing and that where it is that it is not reliable enough yet. So things like that, like where you want it to be completely autonomous, one, it is not reliable enough for you to feel like, okay, you can really hand it off to the customer and feel like they can use it right now. That is number one. Number two is that the token cost of something in a loop when it is unbounded is also a big factor. One thing that we are seeing is like if you don't have that consciousness of like, okay, hey, how much tokens you are using, how well you are managing it, how can you really do it? It is easy enough. AI will probably produce a good solution, but by the time you have burnt a lot of tokens that you don't
Right.
feel like you can really afford in a realistic like in an enterprise way, you cannot really afford that. So making sure what you are doing is good quality at the same time the cost trade-off the benefit to it can needs to be evaluated correctly, and it varies for each domain. Like for example, we can say that like, and we don't know how this is going to evolve. To me, that's a big factor that we are looking at and doing that. The second thing I would say is like for anyone who's looking at it is like, for example, we continuously evaluate the models are really getting deprecated and they are changing quite a bit. Like they are improving, you see brand new models coming in, but at the same time, the older models are doing it. So you really need to make sure your system is architected and in a way from a maintainability and support perspective that you can easily transition from an existing model to a new model, which really means that like you need to have evaluation frameworks, you have mechanisms that can actually ensure the use cases that you built on a previous model version continues to work when you migrate and move to a newer model. So if you don't have that automated mechanisms that are allowing you to reevaluate all the use cases with the newer model, then it may be the case that the prompts and the mechanisms, the things that you build no longer actually equally applies in the newer model. And that's a challenge that we are trying to solve. Because for us, a lot of the things is like it is good thing if you have a fixed set of use cases, but when you're really exposing it to students and you're really having them utilize it, you really don't know what kind of questions and everything that they are going to ask. So making sure that like you're essentially having a good set of things that you can use is like and reevaluate and ensure that you can apply it with the newer models is an area that we are also working in trying to figure it out.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mohan, for sharing, yeah, some of the areas that you're, investigating and still trying to figure out. And as you mentioned earlier, I'm sure by the time you figure that out, there's going to be something else new that comes up next. But I think, as you said, it's about the mindset, right? Being willing to throw some of the things that you've used earlier and continuing to pick up new things and then adapting and evolving. I think is one of the key takeaways in terms of yeah, how to adapt to this AI world. So yeah, thanks once again for taking the time to share your learnings and experiences in terms of building with AI. Thanks once again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Raj. Really appreciate the conversation and really had a good time talking to you about like, okay, where we are and where AI will take us. The future is really up to us to define. We'll figure out how to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.